Hello, my name is Val Bainton and I used to be the editor of GTO magazine, but now I'm contributing editor and I get involved in all sorts of projects for GTO, like this special TV programme. I've been asked to produce a feature about gardens, which seems particularly appropriate given the restrictions we've had on our movements in the last few months and the suitability of gardens for going out and about with your group, as they meet the restrictions and the government guidelines so much more easily than being inside. I'm speaking to you today from my own garden in Staffordshire, close to the famous Trentham Gardens and other lovely gardens like Biddulph Grange and Shugborough Hall. And I have found being outside in the garden and exploring a real consolation during the lockdown. With the amazing technology we have today, I've been able to bring together what's happening and an overview of gardens from around the country and as they reopen to visitors. I've been speaking to managers and head gardeners to find out what's particularly attractive this year and looking forward to their plans for 2021. I've always been particularly interested in the history of gardens, and later on in this feature I shall be giving you some details and looking at walled gardens and also kitchen gardens and examining some very interesting developments that are taking place around the country. But first we are going to catch up with the National Garden Scheme, which have gardens all over England and Wales, and I'm delighted to talk to Linda Shelton, the National Garden Scheme's Visitor Development Manager, to find out a little bit more about what they're up to this year and of course for 2021. We have on hand to talk us through the National Garden Scheme, we have Linda Shelton, who is the Garden Scheme's Visitor Development Manager. And I'm pleased to meet you, Linda, and I'm sure you're going to tell us a little bit about what exactly the National Garden Scheme is.
Thank you very much, Val. It's lovely to meet you, and thank you also to all our group organisers for joining us today. That's really fantastic to be able to be with you again in some way at least. The National Garden Scheme is a charity which has actually been going since 1927, it's quite a long time ago, and we help private garden owners open their gardens to raise money for the charity. We offer exclusive access for you and for other visitors to a wide range of gardens across England and Wales, from country estates to romantic country cottages to urban hideaways and even roof gardens. And in most years, we have over 3,500 gardens which open across England and Wales. So there's a huge amount of choice.
So can groups visit gardens and how would they go about doing it?
Absolutely. Our garden owners, love group visitors. They love that. And of the over 3,000 gardens that we have, there are over 1,000 garden owners who welcome groups across England and Wales, as I said. So there's plenty of choice. The best thing really is that when you visit as a group, you organise a time and a date with the garden owner that suits you and suits them. And then when you go, you are the only people in the garden at that time. So you'll receive a really warm welcome from the garden owner, or sometimes the head gardener if it's a really large property. And you'll have plenty of time to explore at leisure, ask questions. Sometimes they will offer you an actual tour. Sometimes you just have a wander around on your own. And in normal times, there's usually afternoon tea on offer if you wanted that for your group, or more of a in-depth tour as well, more structured tour. Obviously, at the moment, that's not being offered, but we hopefully, of course, that will come back for next year. The gardens that are open to groups are all listed on our website, which is ngs.org.uk/groups. And against each garden's information, and there's plenty of information from each garden, plenty of lovely images, you will find the contact details for the garden owner, their email or sometimes telephone as well. You simply get in touch with them, suggest the dates you're looking for and organise it with them. They will give you all the information you need about parking, access, admission fees, whether or not refreshments are available, etc. And then you just simply go along and enjoy your visit.
A distinctive feature of many public and private gardens that are open to visitors is the walled garden. With its protective wall creating a microclimate and sheltering plants and visitors from cold winds, these are really lovely places to walk around and may give you ideas of what to plant back at home. These gardens were founded at most country houses during the 19th century, and that was really their heyday. Their purpose was to provide vegetables, flowers for the household. During the 20th century, many fell into disuse and rapidly became overgrown and were lost, and nobody knew they were there. Several have recently been rediscovered and renovated, and perhaps the most famous is the Lost Garden of Halligan in Cornwall. There's a host to visit of these walled gardens, and their histories are very varied, and here are just a few to whet your appetite. Some walled gardens are based in the remains of religious cloisters, using the ancient walls of these religious buildings for their gardens. Such is the case at Abergavenny Garden in Wales, where a cloister from Elizabethan times forms a backdrop for one of its 3 walled gardens. And in London at the Charter House, the old monastery wall was reused for the garden. Kate Robinson, head gardener there, tells us more.
Hi, my name is Kate. I'm the head gardener here at the Charter House, and let me show you our gardens. Welcome to the Charter House. We are an almshouse and a heritage site, and we have over 40 older residents that live on the site, which is why we've closed the door to the public for this year. But hopefully we should be able to get people back to come and see our beautiful gardens next year. This is the Norfolk Cloister Garden, and it's so called because this wall here is part of the original monastery walls, but they were rebuilt by Duke of Norfolk when he was under house arrest here in 1571. So it's the last part of the original monastery, but we have this beautiful garden which sits slightly lower than the rest of the Charter House gardens and is a little bit more shady. So the planting in here is slightly reflects that. So we have more white, pale pink and pale purple planting in here to brighten this corner up a little bit. And also it's more shade tolerant plants like these hellebores and these lovely hydrangea paniculata and ferns. And in this lovely central parterre we have the silver leaves of the Santolina, purple agapanthus and these lovely white cleome which we grew from seed. And it's a lovely peaceful spot and a really lovely place to sit and reflect. And I hope you can visit soon. Thank you. So I hope you enjoyed a little glimpse of the Norfolk Garden here. We've got plenty more gardens to show you, so please have a look at our website for all our online virtual events and our online shop. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kate, for sharing insights into the garden and especially some ideas for shade-loving plants. That will be really helpful for my garden, I can tell you. Other walled gardens to visit in London include those at Fulham Palace, which is the former home to the Bishops of London. And there, the recently restored walled garden dates back to the 18th century. And of course at Kew Gardens, where the kitchen gardens were huge and were used to supply members of the royal family at Kew Palace. In 2019, Hillsborough Castle in Northern Ireland opened its renovated garden and kitchen garden. This was part of a huge redevelopment project that also did work within the house and over all of the gardens. So the new kitchen garden is a really lovely place to visit. And we are joined here today by the manager of the garden, Claire Woods, and also the head gardener, Adam Ferguson, and they're going to tell us a little bit more about the history of the gardens and what they look like today and how it supplies lots of lovely produce for the cafes on site.
The harvest this year really is momentous in the life of the garden, because this is the first harvest that we've had since we were open to the public, and it'll be the first time then that we're going to have produce on sale. The wall garden here at Hillsborough, its real function is to produce fruit and vegetables for use in the cafe. So when you come in, you will see the permanent crops, you'll see the vegetable crops. Around the walls, you'll see some of our very historic espalier pear trees, which are over 100 years old. And it's really exciting because they're still producing really top quality fruit. The gardens here at Hillsborough were first enclosed at the time that the house was built in the 1760s. And by 1788, the walled garden had its walls all the way around it, and it was in full production. So it was at that stage producing flowers and fruit for the house, feeding all the staff who lived on the site. It has been in use on and off over the centuries ever since.
This has been a massive year for us here in the walled garden. It's been so much work to get it to this stage, and it's been great that this is finally the first growing season. The winter months last year involved a lot of planning and preparation so that we have crops producing right through the year and being able to supply a steady flow of produce into the kitchens. We liaise very closely with the Yellow Door team and the kitchen staff in order to plan what crops is going to be coming into the kitchens. Everything is used, there's no waste whatsoever. We're able to use all the crops which are coming out of the garden.
In your traditional kitchens, you'd be placing orders for veg that you were sort of planning on the next day, where here at the end of the day we sort of go out and have a look what's going to be available to be picked. Certainly with the likes of the herbs in the garden, you'd be getting them in plastic packets delivered to your kitchen door, where here if we can be halfway through the day and we need fresh herbs, the guys will go out and just trim some herbs off. And it's a lot fresher, and it's definitely a real selling point here. It is a lot nicer working this kind of way, and I know it does give the guys inspiration of sort of wanting to do something a little bit different.
The crops we're growing in this garden is heritage varieties of crops mixed with the more modern equivalents. It allows visitors to see the difference between the two and how crops have changed through the years. There's some really interesting heritage varieties of crops, such as golden beetroot, which people might not have ever seen or heard of before. One of the more modern crops that we're using is parcel. This is a cross between parsley and celery, so a cotton celery as such. Although we are using modern equipment and methods, we are also using more traditional methods and how it would have been done in this garden originally. We're growing organically here. Compared to the crops that you would see in your everyday supermarket, these crops are a much higher quality and a much better standard, and the flavours are much more intense.
The layout of the garden is very traditional. It was originally designed and divided into 16 areas. We then actually have subdivided the areas to make them smaller and more manageable and easier for visitors to get up close to the vegetables and to the fruit and to walk between the beds.
Thank you, Claire and Adam, for sharing what's happening at Hillsborough Castle Garden with us. It really, really looks like there are some tasty treats to enjoy in the attractions, cafes and restaurants. So it's a great place to visit in due course. Many walled gardens are attached to a historic house, such as Hillsborough Castle, but some walled gardens are now standalone. And such is the case with Eastern Walled Gardens in Grantham in Lincolnshire. And we have been joined by Ursula Chumley, who is going to tell us how she and her husband have saved the garden and brought it back to life from 2001 onwards. Ursula, over to you.
Welcome to Eastern Walled Gardens. On the 70th anniversary of the Gower Report, which highlighted the dreadful plight of historic houses by the middle of the 20th century, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what happened here. This was originally the front drive of a big house called Eastern Hall, and it has been here since at least 1592. There was a medieval manor, and then it became a grand Victorian country house. My husband's family have lived here for over 400 years, so our children are the 14th generation to be brought up here, but there is no house anymore. The house itself was requisitioned twice, once as a convalescent home after the First War, and secondly as a barracks during the Second War. And that was really when the main damage was done. And if you had come here 70 years ago, the front door would have been just here. We've just put a plaque here that shows where the front door was. And looking out over the gardens, I'm going to walk across through where the house was. And this was the orangery, looking out over the south lawn here. And then a huge conservatory that looked down over the gardens here. So as it was a barracks during the Second World War, 2 para were stationed here. They were extremely brave, but very wild young men, and they let off rounds in the house, grenades into the greenhouses. And so my husband's grandfather, Hugh, made the heartbreaking decision for him to pull the house down in 1951, just after the report was published. And thereafter, the entire site fell into rack and ruin for almost exactly 50 years before we decided to try and at least restore the gardens. And we've been working on this ever since. You wouldn't have been able to see this view 20 years ago because it was just covered with sycamores and self-sown ash. And now today it's a big day for us because we're delighted to welcome back our visitors, having been closed for coronavirus. So it seems an auspicious day all round, and maybe you'll come and visit us and see that there is hope after what must have seemed after the war really a very desperate situation. So thank you for listening in.
Thank you, Ursula. Eastern Walled Garden is currently taking bookings for their special weeks next year, Snowdrop Week in February and Sweet Pea Week in June and July. Now, these do get booked up really, really fast. So if you are interested, I would recommend that you inquire as soon as possible. Other beautiful country houses with walled gardens include Bowwood House in Wiltshire. And here, the private walled garden are open once a month. And we have Jen Edmondson, Head of Marketing for Bowwood House and Gardens, to tell us more about the gardens that you can find at Bowwood House.
Bowwood is a 2,000-acre country estate based in the heart of Wiltshire. Bowwood House has been home to the Lansdowne family since 1754 and passed down through the generations. The present occupants are the 9th Marquis and Marchioness of Lansdowne, and they opened Bowwood to the public in 1975. We have over 100 acres of pleasure grounds around the house and gardens, so we've been able to implement, really safe social distancing, but we haven't actually been able to welcome groups back at this point as yet. So we are actually only open for 8 months of the year. Traditionally, we've always opened between April and October, and then the season ends. So we won't be extending the season next year. We're just very much looking forward to 2021, and we'll reopen the season on the 1st of April next year. And I think, from a group's point of view, obviously we had to cancel most of our group tours for this year, but I'm really pleased to say that the majority of those have already rebooked for 2021. We'd introduced new head gardener tours and a change to our private wall garden tours for 2020, so we'll roll those through to 2021. So we host a large number of large-scale events during the year, ranging from an Easter egg hunt through the grounds to a classic Ibiza concert for 6,000 people. Every autumn, we host a game and country fair. Now, even though those have all had to be cancelled for this year, we have managed to reschedule all of them for 2021. So, it's looking very positive for next year. For any groups to contact Bowwood, you can find all the details via our website, which is bowwood.org. And so you can call the office, email the office, and our team there will be, happy to help with any group inquiries and bookings. And we very much look forward to working together to welcome group visitors back to Bowwood next year.
In Lancashire, at Leighton Hall, joint owner Susie Arthurs has made the planting of her wall garden a really personal project. When you visit, there are some beautiful roses and fragrant blooms, a vegetable garden, and very recently a bee corner has been opened. And Susie is on hand now to guide us round her lovely walled garden. Over to you, Susie.
Hello everyone, my name's Susie and I'm going to take you on a little journey into the walled garden at Leighton Hall, which is one of my very favourite places. A bit like a secret garden. We go in through the gate and here we are walking under some lovely shady arches into a double herbaceous border. We're between a double herbaceous border with some lovely traditional English planting spilling over the paths. As we go up the path, we are going to find ourselves in our new project, which we call Bee Corner. We're very keen to show our visitors the importance of pollinators, the importance of bees, what we can do for them, and particularly something about their lives. We've got a nice board here which tells us all how important bees are, why they're so important, and even more important than that, this one, how we can help the bees, how we can all help our pollinators, our bees, our butterflies. And I hope we will welcome you to Leighton before too long. There's much more to see and we'd be delighted for you to come and see us.
Meanwhile, over the Pennines in Yorkshire, Scampston Hall walled garden dates back to the 18th century, but it has quite an interesting little twist, because although it's in a very traditional walled space, the owners of the hall have used the landscape designer Pete Udolf to come up with some very, very contemporary designs as part of the garden. And this features some lovely meadow areas and wild grasses. So it's quite an interesting place to visit. Looking ahead, Europe's largest garden project is due to open on the 11th of May 2021. This is RHS Bridgewater Garden in Salford, Manchester, and it is actually the RHS's 5th garden. It features a huge walled garden of some 11 acres, which is just one part of the 154-acre site, which is all being transformed and replanted, and it will be an absolutely wonderful place to visit. We have the curator, Marcus Chilton-Jones, and other members of the Bridgewater team talking to us now, and they're going to share what the garden means to them and give us an insight into the work they've been carrying out.
RHS Bridgewater is the largest gardening project in Europe at this point in time. We're working across 154 acres, but the focus is very much on the wall garden as the epicentre of the site at this point in time.
Means quite a lot to the area, you know, especially as it's so close to an urban setting.
On this particular side of Manchester, where it's the north and the west of Manchester, there is nothing. So this is going to be a big attraction here. It might make a lot of city children think about either getting into gardening or agriculture.
It's acting as a nucleus for change in the area. We're now at the really exciting phase of bringing in new plants to the site. The team have just embarked on a programme to put in 100,000 plants over the next 6 months.
The experience is absolutely great. As you can see, I'm here today in the rain. Nothing's going to stop me. I think that it is good for the soul to be gardening alongside like-minded people on a project as significant as this.
Thank you to the Bridgewater team for sharing all those insights into the garden, and I for one cannot wait to visit next year. But of course, meanwhile, while we're all waiting, the other RHS gardens are still open, and I really look forward to welcoming you to these lovely gardens throughout England. Finally, as with all the gardens we've mentioned, do please get in touch with each garden before you visit to check the opening days and the hours, because these do change throughout the season to reflect the time of year. And also you will then be able to check how to pre-book your tickets, what facilities are open, and also get the latest information on the number of visitors and guests you can include in your party, because this does vary from place to place. It's important to remember that all these new government guidelines are in place to help us and to make sure that we all have really safe and enjoyable visits wherever we go. But I think the key message is these gardens are open, many gardens are open, and they're really looking forward to welcoming us there. So thank you very much for joining us today.